west of the Atchafalaya Basin. So it extends Lafayette, Alexandria, Lake Charles, back to Beaumont, Port Arthur, all the way westward to Houston. So locally, it includes St. Mary, St. Martin parishes, Iberia, extended up towards Lafayette, St. Landry, up towards Avoyelles Parish as well. Nothing yet for Metro Baton Rouge and eastward and northward, but I do think more than likely we'll see additional tornado watches issued through the day today. Whether that happens before lunchtime or into the afternoon remains to be seen, but by the afternoon I think it's likely that most, if not all of us, will be under a tornado watch as the active storms that are right now out to our west gradually translate in this direction. So here's a look at first alert Doppler radar right now through the overnight and this morning. We've seen some passing showers, but largely that's been it. Some showers here in the local area. You can see them lifting north and moving north pretty quickly. It gives you an idea that the winds are moving at a pretty good clip, a little bit higher up in the atmosphere when you see the showers moving along like that. Right now, generally dry in and around the city. A couple of showers moving through Point Capee, West Feliciana, up into Wilkinson County, Mississippi, but nothing major here locally as of yet. But it's a much different story back here in southeast Texas. We saw a supercell thunderstorm come ashore from the Gulf of Mexico. West of Sabine Pass earlier this morning. That looks like it produced a tornadic debris signature. So we likely had a tornado touchdown here in southeast Texas. And about 10 minutes or so ago, with this cell just west of Orange, Texas, looked like we might have been seeing another one of these tornadic debris signatures as that one was lifting up to the northeast. So we're already seeing some tornadic storms out to our west, just across the Sabine River into eastern Texas. And so now southwest Louisiana could be a little more under the gun over the next couple of hours. And that's going to be one of the things to track. It's going to be these individual cells out ahead of the main line that will have the greatest tornadic potential through the day today. So we're going to have to keep an eye out to see if we continue to see some of these individual discrete, if you will, cells developing ahead of this main squall line. Now the main squall line showing some signs of weakening a little bit in areas right now, but we think that line will kind of get reinvigorated as it pushes off to the east and daytime heating kicks in. There's going to be a lot working in its favor, so there's a lot more thunderstorm activity headed our way. Let me give you an updated look at the HRRR model future radar, if you will. Now, if anything, the newest model guidance coming in over the last hour or two has trended just a little bit slower with the storms into the afternoon. So let's take a look at it. So through the morning locally, not expecting a whole lot here. We'll see some passing showers, but the threat of severe weather through lunchtime, I think in our local area, is pretty minimal. You can see at noon, the HRRR still has most of the storms closer to the Sabine River and back into western Louisiana. Here we are 2:30, and again, the models are kind of bouncing around. Most of our overnight and early morning runs of the models, we're showing some of those individual discrete cells kind of forming by early afternoon. Latest run of the HRRR just in, not really showing that, kind of focusing most of the energy along that squall line. So it's keeping it relatively quiet here even into early afternoon. Although I'm a little uneasy about that. I think we could still get some individual storm cells developing out ahead of the main line. We do start to see that not long after. You see some of these popping up. So some of these, if that plays out, would have a little more of an enhanced tornado potential. This is 4 o'clock, though, with the squall line rolling into western parts of our area. So on the HRRR, at least, it's got it from Wilkinson County down through West Feliciana, Point Capee, just west of Baton Rouge, extending down to around New Iberia. That's 4 o'clock. We advance it to 5 o'clock, the squall line marching through, and we still see some individual storm cells showing up out ahead of the main line. The good news here is the squall line should be moving along fairly quickly. So by 7 o'clock, things should be improving. Baton Rouge westward, could still be storms. I-55 extending down Laplace to near Houma. New Orleans still very much in play for storms up to the North Shore at 7 o'clock. But that line continues marching eastward. And by 10 o'clock tonight, the storms are largely gone, but that squall line is actually going to be out ahead of the cold front a little bit. So these few showers you see showing up closer to Baton Rouge 10 o'clock, that's the actual cold front starting to move in. So still a chance of a few showers, but even those move out. And by the time we get to midnight beyond, pretty much all the rain should be out of here, and it will be turning cooler into the overnight. Storm Prediction Center updated their severe weather outlook a little before 8 o'clock this morning. And if you're with me on 9 News this morning, I was showing you the level 3 out of 5 enhanced risk of severe weather that was in place. Not only did the Storm Prediction Center keep that, they kind of expanded the area covered by that. So now most of the WAFB viewing area included in that 3 out of 5, the exception being some of our counties in southwest Mississippi, a little bit east of Baton Rouge, but they also expanded it westward back into southeast Texas, which is kind of ended up being a good forecast because, as I said, we've already seen a couple of tornadic cells back into southeastern Texas. The other headline with the outlook they released just before 8 this morning was the tornado outlook. So they have a general kind of that 1 to 5 scale they give us, and then they break it down by specific storm threats. So as we look at the tornado probabilities, that 3 out of 5 area essentially equates to a 10% chance here in yellow, a 10% chance of a tornado touching down within 25 miles of a point. So that still means your odds of seeing a tornado in any given location, any given neighborhood, they're pretty low. But these probabilities are much higher than we see most days throughout the year. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Your chances of being impacted by severe weather, and especially tornadoes, are still relatively low. But the problem is these are elevated odds, relatively speaking, compared to what we see most of the year. But on top of the 10% outlook, what they added in the 8 a.m. outlook, can you make out this black hatching, those lines, now indicating not only that tornado threat, but not ruling out a couple of strong tornadoes. Those would be EF2 or stronger. So we certainly want to track this closely as we get into the afternoon hours. Again, already seeing some of this tornadic potential out to our west, and we'll see how that plays out as everything translates eastward through the day. Now, in terms of the rainfall, these are model forecasts for Baton Rouge, and right now they're largely coming in about a ½ inch to a little bit over 1 inch of rainfall. I think these numbers might be a little bit low. Let me give you a look at a couple of the models more on a regional scale. So here's the HRRR. What you'll note is that it actually gives most of us anywhere from 1 to 2 inches of rain, and then has some isolated hot spots, even 2 to 3 inches or more. So I think that's pretty reasonable representation. So it just happened in this particular run. The HRRR, Baton Rouge, comes in a little bit lower than some of the surrounding areas, but I think it's reasonable to plan on 1 to 2 inches of rain for most of us today, and understand those amounts could go a bit higher in spots. And I'll show you the graph model also, which is kind of similar. Again, has much of the area getting 1 to 2 inches, just happens to have a little bit less right over Baton Rouge in this particular run. So I think you see a decent consensus that we should plan on 1 to 2 inches of rain, come in a little bit lower. We'll certainly take that, but amounts could go higher. You see some of those hot spots again showing up on the graph model as well. So here's a look at everything on the satellite and radar. A couple of things to note. Number one, we've got a warm front that's straight from the coast of southeast Louisiana into southwestern Louisiana and back into southeastern Texas. That feature is driving a lot of the storms we're seeing out to our west this morning, particularly some of these rotating storms out around the Sabine River. And then you can see the squall line that's just racing eastward across Texas. Again, this is actually out ahead of the cold front a bit. But so there's two things we're going to track. Number one, into the afternoon, as that warm front continues to lift inland, do we see storms developing along the warm front out ahead of the squall line? If so, they'll have an enhanced potential to rotate and maybe produce a few tornadoes, and then we'll get that actual squall line rolling in from the west as we get deeper into the afternoon. And this is all tied into a potent upper level storm system. This is going to turn into a closed low, moving across the deep south. And so one thing to mention, really a secondary story here, once we get beyond the severe weather threat today, is that with that upper level storm system kind of slowly moving across the deep south, even with the cold front moving through tonight, probably going to be some clouds lingering tomorrow and probably even Friday. especially near and north of the interstate, some wraparound moisture. That upper low is also going to keep some pretty healthy winds going both Thursday and Friday. So understand a couple of breezy, if not windy days ahead in the wake of the cold front. Let me show you that using the HRRR model. So it shows into the afternoon. We could see some winds starting to gust into the 30s as the cold front approaches. And obviously the numbers could go higher and maybe a good bit higher in any strong to severe storms. But that would be a little more isolated. That's 5 o'clock. And then as the front moves on through, might get a little bit of a lull in the winds, but it's still going to be breezy overnight tonight. This is at midnight, seeing a lot of gusts showing up in the 20s. As we head towards daybreak on Thursday, gusts in the teens and around 20. But once the sun comes up, that's kind of starts stirring up the atmosphere. And look at this, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, HRRR showing many spots gusting mid to upper 30s. Pretty healthy winds even after the storms are long gone and behind the cold front. So I just want you to understand that's going to be a lingering issue into the day tomorrow. And you can see tomorrow afternoon winds still gusting in the 30s, and even late tomorrow where you start to see the green showing up. Those are some gusts that could be up around 40 miles per hour. So there's going to be a good bit of wind ahead even once we get through the storms, the severe weather threat, and once the front's off to our east, because that upper level low is kind of spinning to our north and some other ingredients. But it looks like it's going to be kind of windy both Thursday and Friday. So first alert today with the threat for strong to severe storms this afternoon. The main threat window for most of our area, I'm kind of sticking with what I've been saying, roughly about 1 o'clock this afternoon to about 7 o'clock this evening. It's a relatively narrow window, but stay extra alert this afternoon into the early evening. And then much cooler air filters in. Mid to upper 50s tomorrow morning, highs in the low 70s, and by Friday, low 50s in the morning, highs in the mid 60s. Need to note, both Thursday and Friday, high temperatures are going to depend a lot on cloud cover. Could end up even cooler in spots if we end up with more clouds. But we should get back to plenty of sunshine just in time for the Halloween weekend. That's the good news. Saturday starts out kind of cool in the upper 40s, highs in the low 70s, bright sunshine. Halloween Sunday, again, upper 40s to around 50 in the morning. Gorgeous day overall, highs in the mid 70s. Show you the trick-or-treating forecast in a second. Nice weather continues into early next week, and then maybe a couple of showers toward the end of next week. But the bottom line is, once we get through the severe weather threat today, headed back into overall quieter weather pattern for a number of days ahead. So this is obviously kind of a secondary story compared to the severe weather threat, but I know a lot of you are worried about it. Got to get your kids out on Sunday for trick-or-treating, right? And I tell you what, the weather looks outstanding. 5 o'clock Sunday evening when trick-or-treating gets underway in many areas, low 70s. And by the time it wraps up around 8 o'clock in most spots, low 60s, clear skies. Shouldn't be much wind to deal with, so kind of comfortably cool. Not too cold, not too warm. Should be a really nice Halloween. As we track the severe weather threat today, make sure you have our first alert weather app installed, WAFB.com/weather app. I've already posted 2 updates in our weather app this morning. Any watches and warnings that come out, you will get notified, and you can track the storms using interactive radar. All right, those are all the graphics I had. And so what I'm going to do now is take a peek down quickly here for those of you watching on Facebook. And if we have time, we'll see if we have any questions. So if you have any questions, pop those in the comments and see if we can answer 1 or 2 of these before we wrap it up. So give me just a second here to get this loaded. But again, ultimately through the morning, it should be relatively quiet. The threat's going to ramp up this afternoon. All right, let's see. Let's see if you guys have any questions. Conda here saying, should the kids be okay or should we go get them? So the best I can tell you is, you know, you probably have a way of getting notified by your school district. Any closures that we get will be posted on our website in our 9 News app. Have spoken to a couple of schools this morning, and there were discussions of some potential early dismissals, but I have not seen anything official from anyone as of yet. So the best I can tell you is, yeah, it's possible that we could hear about some early dismissals, but I don't have anything on that front yet. One little bit of good news is with the models, the latest runs coming in over the last hour or two, coming in just a little bit slower. That might help us some with the afternoon carpool and the afternoon pickup, but still, once we get beyond 2:30 this afternoon, the threat really could start to ramp up. So it's going to be kind of a close call on the school dismissals and some potential weather impacts. Yes, another question about schools there, so we kind of talked about that. What time should we see these storms? So again, the main threat window I'm kind of talking about is anywhere from about 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. So the earlier part of that window is going to be if we get any of those individual storm cells developing out of the head of the main line, and there's some question marks on that. And that's because there's kind of some mixed influences in play in the atmosphere today. Briefly at least, maybe not simply, but briefly, there's a lot of wind shear, a good bit of wind shear in the atmosphere today, which helps with producing rotating storms. But the instability is a little more marginal, so kind of some competing influences. So whether we get those individual storm cells, if we start to see some of those popping, that could start to happen in the 1, 2 o'clock hours. If we don't get much of the way of those individual storm cells, it may be 3 o'clock or later before many of us start getting impacted by that main squall line. But anywhere from that 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. window, I think it's fair to say is in play for some strong to severe storms. All right, let's see here. One more second as I check. All right, I'm not seeing many other questions rolling in. So with that, we'll probably go ahead and wrap it up. So Jeff Morrow will be back on for 9 News at noon. He'll be here to get you through noon, 4 and 5. Jay Grimes will be joining him this afternoon. The whole team will be on it. I'll be keeping an eye on it as well, posted on social media as things unfold. But bottom line is, it's 9:51 right now. Should be relatively quiet through lunchtime, but as we get into the afternoon, pay attention. Pretty good chance we'll go under a tornado watch at some point, and the threat probably peaking during the mid to late afternoon hours for most of us. We'll go ahead and wrap it up for now, and hope you join Jeff Morrow for 9 News at noon.